So the last time we spoke, I was showing you guys the car lift that I just installed, and I was also explaining a problem that I was having where my turbos will fill up with oil and drip out of the exhaust pipes a little bit. So I've done lots and lots of research and lots of reading, lots of thinking, lots of calculating, and what I think is the problem is that my alternator is not spinning fast enough at idle to fully energize the entire system. So according to all the research I've done, Corvettes come with a 145 amp alternator, but it only makes 145 amps if it needs it and it's above 1800 RPM. Well, whenever my car first starts, and you know those times when I push the clutch in, the RPMs drop down to 500. Well, according to the calculations, based off the pulley measurements I've got on my car, at 500 RPM, the alternator is only spinning at 1200 RPM, which means it's not in the range where it's making any voltage at all. So whenever it dips down that low, I've got all of the juice just coming straight from the battery. And ever since I've had my Corvette, it's actually had this issue where at idle, the headlights aren't very bright. Ever since day one when I bought it 5 years ago, and it only had 40,000 miles on it when I bought it. But day one, it's had the same issue. As soon as you start going, everything comes to life, no problem. And I hadn't really paid much attention to whether it was charging or not until recently. So why does it matter that my car needs full voltage, full amps at idle? Well, the oil pump draws a max of 6 amps. That's an additional 6 amp strain on the battery and the rest of the system whenever the alternator is not putting out any current at all. And then the boost air-fuel ratio gauge that I just installed draws a maximum of 3 amps. So there's an additional 9 amp draw at idle or anytime the RPMs drop, on top of what was already there from the factory. So what was already there from the factory wasn't strong enough to make the headlights bright. So if I have my high beams on, the oil pump running, and the AFR gauge going, all of a sudden, I barely have enough juice to keep the motor running. I also have bigger injectors, which don't run a whole lot more current, but they take more voltage to actuate, because they're larger injectors. Not a whole lot more, but I've noticed that whenever I first start it up at certain RPMs and certain conditions, it doesn't start up very easy, and there's kind of like a popping sound until it gets up to the right RPM. So what I have found is that, well, let me show you guys what's going on. I haven't started the car in a little while because I don't want my turbos to fill up with oil, and I've been futzing with the gauge. Oh, by the way, I completely removed the 3-pod gauge right here and put the combo gauge right here. So this has a boost controller, it has a AFR gauge and boost gauge built into it. I'm not really worried about the fuel pressure anymore, because even at 5 psi, I lose some fuel pressure. I don't stay at 58 psi, but it drops down to about 45 psi, which is about what this fuel pump can spin, but it still runs exactly where the tune wants it to. It still stays at 11.5 on the AFR gauge. No issues there, so I took the fuel gauge off. I'm not worried about it. But I'll let you guys see kind of what goes on here. So here's the gauge. All right, so this is really what happens whenever I start it. You can hear it takes like 10 seconds for it the oil pump to come up. So what I've done is I went and got a smaller belt and a smaller pulley for my alternator. Apparently it's a common thing that lots and lots of people do when they run a big stereo or they put an underdrive pulley system on their car. apparently it's a popular thing to do, and you can get these pulleys for like 12-15 bucks. So I'm gonna throw that on real quick and see what kind of a difference it makes. There's the size difference between the pulleys. So this one is 2 5/8, and this one is 2 inches. So the only difference is that this pulley has the spacer built into the back, and this one doesn't. So you just pull off the old spacer and slip that one on. That's it. The hope is that in situations like this where I'm idling and backing down the driveway or coming up to a stop sign, that the voltage doesn't drop. It used to do it terrible right here at this stop sign. It still does it a little bit. I've seen it drop down to 9 volts right here at this stop sign. So what happens is I punch the clutch in, put my foot on the brake, and almost every single time I do that, the pump spins down. See if it doesn't want to hit this speed bump. Nope. To another stop sign. So there's no reason to downshift like a race car driver in a neighborhood. So here we go. Huh. Okay. Well, I guess that fixed it. But that's the big reason why I keep having oil fill up my turbos, or kind of seep out of the turbos anyway, because I'm a lot more sensitive to it now that I've figured out what's going on. The voltage drops almost every single time I come to a stop sign. Here's another one. Nope. Nope, not at all. The oil pump spins down. You can hear the RPMs of the oil pump drop. And if you like if you're driving really fast and then all of a sudden you have to hit your brakes because somebody in front of you is being retarded, the oil pump would just about turn off. You couldn't even hear it. Or if you're like trolling up to a stop sign and you almost kill it, or the RPMs drop really low, the oil pump would just spin way down. So this looks like it's gonna fix the problem. Here's the red light. Let's see what's going on. Nope, I didn't hear the RPMs change at all. And the one thing that's kind of crazy is that when the oil gets really hot, when the oil gets around 200 degrees operating temp, you can't hear the oil pump at all. Not even a little bit whenever you're driving down the road. I guess the viscosity of the oil changes a lot whenever it gets hot, and I guess that's the reason you can hear the oil pump when I first start the car, because it's working harder to pump that thicker oil. Oops. Sorry, I'm driving with my left hand. Here's a quick look at the new boost gauge and the location. So I've turned up the boost a little bit. I think that was about 5 PSI or something like that. Let's see, what was a peak boost? Wideband boost, 6.4. And it goes a little bit richer than I want. The tune's not finished, but anyway. Quick update. Next up, I've got to figure out how to get the new wideband to work work with my AC switch, so HP tuners can pick up the wideband whenever I'm tuning it. So that shouldn't be too hard. It's just finding the hot wires in the outlet wire, or the output wire from the gauge. So hopefully I'll be tuning it here this weekend, getting some more boost. I'm planning on turning it up to 8 PSI. We'll see how things go.